Evelyn had always been fascinated by guns. Ever since she was a young woman, she loved learning about different types of firearms, their history, and how they worked. Over the years, she had built a small collection at home and had trained herself to handle them safely and skillfully. Now, at 72, she still had the same curiosity and excitement whenever she encountered something new in the world of firearms. Age, she often thought, was just a number. It could never diminish her passion. On a bright Saturday morning, Evelyn decided to visit one of the most popular gun stores in the city. It was a place she had heard about for years, known for carrying rare and high-end rifles that most people only read about online. Today, she wanted to see them in person. As she parked her car, she felt a familiar thrill in her chest, a mixture of anticipation and excitement. Walking into the store, she took a moment to look around. The walls were lined with shiny rifles and handguns, polished and displayed carefully under bright lights. The air smelled faintly of gun oil and wood polish, a scent that always made her feel at home. She moved slowly, deliberately, taking in every detail. Evelyn was not a stranger to such places, but something about this store felt different. It was larger, more upscale, almost like stepping into a museum dedicated to firearms. There were a few customers browsing quietly, and she noticed a group of young employees organizing the shelves in the corner. They looked professional, but when she made eye contact with one of them, she caught a fleeting smirk. Evelyn didn't think much of it. After all, she was used to curious glances. Still, there was something in the way a couple of employees exchanged subtle nods and whispered to each other that made her pause slightly. Evelyn made her way toward the display of rifles she had come to see. She ran her fingers gently along the polished stocks, feeling the smoothness of the wood and the cold metal of the barrels. She appreciated the craftsmanship in every piece. Her eyes lit up when she saw a particular sniper rifle she had been researching online. It was sleek, modern, and came with advanced scopes and features she found fascinating. She picked it up carefully, examining it from every angle, reading the small labels, and imagining how it would feel to hold it in the field. As she turned to look for someone to ask a few technical questions, a young employee approached her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, his tone polite but tinged with a hint of amusement. Evelyn smiled gently, appreciative of the respect, and began to ask about the rifle's specifications. She asked detailed questions about its weight, recoil, scope adjustment, and even the recommended maintenance routine. Her questions were precise, showing a depth of knowledge that immediately surprised the young man. However, instead of simply answering her questions, the employee whispered to his coworker, and Evelyn noticed a faint chuckle escape them. She felt a small pang of irritation but reminded herself not to react. She had encountered skepticism many times before, often due to her age, and she knew how to handle it with grace. She continued speaking confidently, carefully articulating her points, her eyes shining with genuine enthusiasm. She could feel some of the other customers watching, sensing the subtle tension in the air. Despite the initial amusement from the staff, Evelyn remained composed. She knew that passion and knowledge often spoke louder than looks or assumptions. Holding the rifle with care, she demonstrated a few handling techniques, showing that she understood balance, aim, and safety procedures better than most first-time buyers. The young employees, now observing more closely, began to realize that this was no ordinary customer. Her hands moved with experience and familiarity, her voice steady and informed, and there was a quiet confidence in her every action. Evelyn's presence in the store was commanding, though not in an aggressive way. There was a subtle power in her calm demeanor, a sense that she knew exactly what she was doing and that age had nothing to do with expertise. She could feel some of the staff beginning to reassess their initial impressions, but she ignored them, focusing instead on the rifles, the mechanics, and the sheer joy of being surrounded by something she loved deeply. Time seemed to slow for Evelyn as she explored the store. Every rifle, every display, every label held a story, and she was eager to discover them all. The atmosphere around her, initially tinged with amusement from the staff, started to shift as she demonstrated her genuine knowledge. Customers nearby started to take notice too, some whispering to each other about how impressive it was to see someone of her age so engaged and skilled. Evelyn, however, remained entirely focused on her own experience, enjoying every moment, knowing that respect was something she often earned simply by showing her expertise and passion. By the time she had spent a good 15 minutes exploring the display, Evelyn had already made a mental note of which rifles she was interested in testing further. She knew that this visit would be memorable, not just for the firearms she saw, but for the small lesson she was about to teach everyone in the store about respect, knowledge, and the fact that age was never a barrier to passion. As Evelyn continued exploring the store, she couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in the way the staff were reacting. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but soon it became clear that some of the younger employees were quietly mocking her. They whispered to each other with smirks on their faces whenever she picked up a rifle or asked a question. One of them even exchanged a glance with a coworker and chuckled softly, as if they were sharing a private joke about how a 72-year-old woman could possibly know anything about modern firearms. Evelyn felt a small flash of irritation, but she refused to let it show. She had faced skepticism all her life because of her age, and she had learned long ago that reacting angrily never helped. Instead, she continued moving with calm confidence, walking between the rows of rifles and carefully examining each one. Her fingers traced the polished wood and metal, feeling the balance and weight, noting the subtle differences in craftsmanship. She spoke quietly to herself, almost like a teacher thinking out loud, discussing the intricacies of recoil management, trigger sensitivity, and scope adjustments. Despite her composure, the employee's behavior grew more obvious. One young man approached her with a half-smile and asked, "Do you need a magnifying glass to read the specs, ma'am?" His tone was teasing, as if he thought he was being clever. Evelyn looked at him for a moment, her eyes calm but sharp, and then replied softly, "No, thank you. I can read just fine." She continued inspecting the rifle as if his comment had barely registered. The slight firmness in her voice, combined with her unwavering focus, made him pause, though he quickly tried to hide it behind a forced laugh. Another employee, standing behind the counter, whispered loudly enough for her to hear, "I don't think she even knows how to hold that thing properly." Evelyn paused and turned slightly, smiling politely. Instead of arguing, she bent down to pick up a different rifle and began explaining to herself, loud enough for the nearby staff to hear, how to safely check the weight distribution and balance before taking aim. Her voice was calm, confident, and precise, carrying a tone of experience that could not be mistaken for amateur curiosity. The mocking whispers started to attract the attention of other customers in the store. Some of them watched silently, sensing the tension between Evelyn and the employees. There was a growing awareness that something unusual was happening. A quiet, older woman being underestimated in a place dominated by younger, seemingly more experienced staff. Evelyn noticed some of the curious glances but ignored them. She was there for herself, for her love of firearms, and not for anyone else's approval. Evelyn's knowledge of firearms was deep and practical. She began asking questions that revealed her understanding of the rifle's inner mechanisms, recoil patterns, and the subtle differences between models. The young employees were initially dismissive, answering with short, slightly patronizing replies. "It's just a basic feature," one said. Evelyn responded calmly, "Yes, I understand that, but the difference in material quality affects long-term durability, which is important for precision shooting." Her words were quiet but carried authority, and some of the staff began to realize they might have underestimated her. A few moments later, a customer nearby asked her a question, curious about which rifle she recommended for long-range shooting. Evelyn looked up, surprised but pleased, and shared her thoughts. She explained the factors affecting accuracy, such as barrel length, ammunition type, and stock design, using simple language but demonstrating clear expertise. The staff, overhearing her explanation, exchanged awkward glances. The smirks were fading, replaced by a quiet unease. It became increasingly clear to them that this woman was far more knowledgeable than they had assumed. Despite the subtle shift in the atmosphere, the mocking continued intermittently. One of the employees sarcastically asked if she wanted a chair to sit down while learning about rifles, implying that she might not have the stamina to stand through the discussion. Evelyn smiled politely and replied, "No, thank you. I prefer standing. It gives me better balance when handling the rifle." Her tone was light, almost cheerful, but there was an unmistakable strength behind her words, a quiet refusal to be belittled. As she moved through the store, Evelyn continued to handle each rifle with care, demonstrating a natural ease that could only come from years of experience. She showed an understanding of the rifles that was technical, detailed, and practical. Every time an employee tried to make a joke or a mocking comment, she responded, not with anger, but with calm confidence, letting her actions speak louder than words. Customers nearby began to notice, some even whispering among themselves about how impressive it was to see someone of her age so knowledgeable and skilled. By the time she had spent nearly half an hour in the store, Evelyn had not only explored several high-end rifles, but had also begun to change the energy around her. The employees' amusement had shifted into a mix of surprise, curiosity, and a growing respect, though they were too proud to admit it openly. Evelyn, unaware of the subtle shift, continued her exploration, focused on the rifles and her own enjoyment. She knew that passion and knowledge had a way of earning respect quietly, without confrontation, and she was living proof of that. Even in the face of mockery, Evelyn's calm demeanor and genuine love for firearms created a silent tension in the store. She remained polite, composed, and entirely unshaken, showing everyone that age did not limit skill or knowledge. Little did she know, the story of this visit was about to take an unexpected turn, one that would leave both staff and customers remembering her not for her age, but for her expertise, grace, and quiet strength. As Evelyn moved deeper into the store, examining the rows of rifles and handguns, the subtle tension in the air began to grow. The young employees, who had at first laughed quietly among themselves, were now starting to feel a bit more awkward. They had thought this visit would be easy, perhaps even amusing, but Evelyn's calm confidence and detailed knowledge were slowly turning the tables. She spoke about the rifles with precision, explaining technical details that many younger customers might not even notice. Yet, instead of respecting her expertise, some employees still whispered and chuckled behind their hands. One of the young men, trying to regain a sense of superiority, leaned against the counter and said, "I guess you know your way around these old rifles, huh? But do you really think you can handle something modern?" His tone was teasing, intended to provoke her, to make her feel out of place. Evelyn looked at him without any hint of anger. Her eyes were steady and calm, and her smile was polite but firm. "Modern rifles are not so different from the classics," she said quietly. "It's all about understanding the mechanics and handling them safely." Her response was simple, yet it carried authority. Despite her calm reply, the young man couldn't hide his irritation. He whispered to his colleague, loud enough for her to hear, "I don't think she knows what she's talking about." Evelyn, pretending not to notice, picked up another rifle and began examining it with meticulous care. She checked the stock, balanced the weight in her hands, and gently tested the trigger. Her movements were smooth, practiced, and precise, something that even an inexperienced eye could recognize as skill. Another employee decided to escalate the teasing. He asked in a mocking tone, "Do you need help carrying that? It looks heavy for you." Evelyn turned slowly to face him, her expression calm but her voice carrying a quiet, undeniable strength. "Thank you, but I manage just fine," she said. Then she demonstrated holding the rifle properly, showing her perfect stance and grip, and even explaining why certain postures improved accuracy. Her explanation was clear, practical, and informed, leaving no doubt about her knowledge. As the mockery continued, some of the nearby customers began to notice. They glanced between Evelyn and the employees, sensing the subtle conflict. There was a growing awareness that something unusual was happening. Here was a woman, clearly older, being underestimated by staff in a place where expertise mattered deeply. Evelyn, aware of the stares but focused on the rifles, ignored them. She was here for herself, not to prove anything, but somehow her presence alone was already making an impact. The employees, realizing that their attempts at ridicule were failing, started to get more desperate. One of them, trying to regain the upper hand, asked sarcastically, "So, ma'am, are you here to buy one of these, or just to look and talk?" Evelyn gave a soft laugh, not mocking, but amused. "I'm here to learn and to see what's available," she replied. "I enjoy understanding the differences between models, and if I find one that suits me, I'll consider buying it." Her words were calm, yet they carried a subtle reminder that experience and knowledge were far more important than youth or appearances. Evelyn then began comparing two similar rifles, pointing out differences that only someone with practical experience would notice. She talked about recoil control, barrel length, trigger sensitivity, and the way different scopes affected accuracy. Each detail she mentioned was small but meaningful, showing her deep understanding. The employees, overhearing her detailed comparison, grew quiet. Their previous whispers and chuckles had faded, replaced by a mix of surprise, embarrassment, and an uneasy realization that they had judged her too quickly. Despite the subtle shift, not all the staff had completely acknowledged her expertise yet. One employee, trying one last time to undermine her, said jokingly, "Well, I guess someone has to teach the young guns how it's done." The sarcasm in his voice was thinly veiled. Evelyn smiled politely, keeping her tone gentle but firm. "Knowledge isn't about age," she said simply. "It's about learning, practice, and respect for the craft." Her words hung in the air, quiet but powerful, and for the first time, some of the employees felt the weight of their own behavior. By this point, the store had grown noticeably quieter. Customers had stopped browsing casually and were now watching, intrigued by the interaction. Evelyn, unaware of the effect she was having on the room, continued her careful inspection of the rifles. She tested the balance, checked the trigger pull, and spoke softly about the nuances of maintenance and care. Each action she took demonstrated expertise, patience, and a level of skill that was undeniable. The tension reached a peak when one of the young employees muttered to another, "I think she actually knows more than we do." The other employee nodded reluctantly, his face red with embarrassment. They realized that their attempts at mockery had failed completely. Evelyn was not only competent, but she was commanding respect without raising her voice. She didn't need to argue or prove anything. Her knowledge and calm demeanor spoke for her, and that was more powerful than any sarcastic remark could ever be. As Evelyn continued, it became clear that the young staff were starting to rethink their assumptions. They had underestimated her from the moment she walked in, judging her based on age alone. But now, as they watched her handle rifles with care, explain technical details, and engage thoughtfully with the products, they were forced to confront the fact that their mockery had been both unfair and foolish. Evelyn's quiet confidence was reshaping the energy in the store, turning what had started as a moment of ridicule into a lesson in humility. Even amidst the lingering whispers and awkward glances, Evelyn remained serene. She was not seeking respect or attention, yet she had earned it through patience, knowledge, and grace. The stage was now set for something even more unexpected to happen, something that would solidify the lesson she was teaching the staff and leave a lasting impression on everyone present. Evelyn could feel the atmosphere in the store shifting, even if the employees hadn't fully realized it yet. Their initial amusement had faded into awkwardness, and now a faint tension lingered in the air. She moved calmly among the rows of rifles, taking her time to examine each one. Her eyes caught the sleek design of a high-end sniper rifle she had researched extensively. It was a rare model, one she had never seen in person before, and she felt a thrill of excitement. But this time, she knew she had to show more than just casual interest. She wanted to demonstrate her genuine understanding of firearms, without ever appearing boastful. Picking up the rifle, she balanced it carefully in her hands. She felt the weight of the stock, the cold steel of the barrel, and the precision of the scope. She gently tested the trigger, her fingers resting lightly on the safety mechanism. Her movements were deliberate, precise, and confident. She began speaking quietly to herself, as if explaining the rifle's features aloud, though loud enough for nearby employees to hear. The recoil here is minimal, but adjusting the stock slightly could improve aim stability. The scope is excellent for long-range accuracy, but the sight picture can be optimized with a small adjustment on the elevation knob. Her words carried a quiet authority. She didn't shout or challenge anyone. She simply spoke with the confidence of someone who had years of experience. The young employees, overhearing her, exchanged uneasy glances. It became increasingly clear that this was not a casual customer. She knew exactly what she was talking about. Some of them began to step back slightly, as if to give her more space, while others tried to mask their surprise with forced smiles. Evelyn then demonstrated a handling technique she had perfected over the years. She showed how to hold the rifle for maximum stability, how to adjust the grip for better control, and how to align the scope without losing focus on the target. Her movements were fluid and natural, each step showing years of practice and knowledge. She didn't rush. She allowed the employees and nearby customers to see how smoothly she handled the weapon. It was clear she wasn't just familiar with the mechanics. She was skilled, experienced, and confident. One of the younger employees, trying to regain some sense of control, asked, "Have you actually shot one of these before?" There was a teasing edge in his voice, as if he expected her to falter. Evelyn looked up, her expression calm and serene. "Yes," she said simply. "I've trained with rifles like this for decades. I understand how each adjustment affects performance. It's not just about aiming. It's about understanding the weapon completely." Her response was quiet, but it had a weight that made the employee pause. He realized she wasn't exaggerating. She was speaking from real experience. As she continued, Evelyn shared tips about maintenance and care, explaining the importance of cleaning the barrel, checking the mechanisms, and properly storing the rifle to ensure longevity. Her explanations were simple enough for anyone to understand, but they revealed an expertise that few younger customers, or even employees, could match. She spoke with a tone of teaching rather than boasting, and that made her knowledge even more impressive. Some customers began to quietly listen, fascinated by the depth of her understanding and the ease with which she shared it. Evelyn then picked up another rifle, a slightly older model, and began comparing the two. She explained the subtle differences in weight distribution, trigger sensitivity, and scope quality. She even mentioned how environmental factors like temperature and humidity could affect performance, pointing out small adjustments that could make a noticeable difference. The employees, overhearing this, looked increasingly uncomfortable. They had entered this interaction thinking they were superior, but now it was clear that Evelyn's expertise far surpassed what they had assumed. Instead of responding with defensiveness or irritation, Evelyn continued to teach gently, allowing the young staff to see the rifle through her eyes. She demonstrated how to hold it, how to adjust the sights, and how to maintain a proper stance. Her calm demeanor and precise movements made it obvious that she wasn't there to argue or prove herself. She was there to share her knowledge and passion. The employees had no choice but to watch in silence, slowly recognizing the depth of her skill. At this point, a few of the employees began asking questions, hesitantly at first. They asked about the best scope settings, the ideal ammunition, and how to reduce recoil for long-distance shooting. Evelyn answered each question patiently, never belittling them, never showing any sign of annoyance. Her willingness to share her expertise only increased the respect growing quietly among the staff. They began to realize that age, which they had used as a reason to mock her, had no bearing on skill or knowledge. Even the customers in the store were beginning to pay close attention. Some whispered to each other, noting how impressive it was to see someone so experienced, knowledgeable, and confident. Evelyn, focused entirely on the rifles, barely noticed the attention. She was absorbed in the work of examining, handling, and teaching. Her quiet confidence had shifted the room's energy. What had started as mocking curiosity had now turned into admiration and respect. By the time Evelyn finished demonstrating the rifles and answering questions, the staff had undergone a subtle but powerful transformation. The mockery and amusement were gone, replaced by a reluctant respect. Even the employees who had initially laughed could not deny the skill, patience, and knowledge that she displayed. Evelyn's calm confidence and quiet authority had done what sarcasm and laughter could never achieve. She had commanded respect simply by being herself and demonstrating her true expertise. The stage was now set for the final moment of recognition. Evelyn had already turned the tide in her favor, but little did she know, The arrival of the store's CEO was about to solidify the lesson for everyone. The quiet authority she had displayed would soon be formally acknowledged, and the young employees would learn firsthand that true expertise and respect are earned, not assumed. As Evelyn continued demonstrating the rifles and sharing her knowledge, a subtle energy shift could be felt in the store. The staff, who had initially mocked her, now watched in quiet amazement, unsure of how to respond to her skill and calm confidence. Her presence had transformed the atmosphere from one of amusement to one of respect and a hint of embarrassment for their earlier behavior. Just as this tension reached its peak, the front door opened, and a tall man in a sharp suit stepped inside. It was the CEO of the store, Mr. Collins, a man known for his hands-on approach and for personally checking on operations when he could. He had heard footsteps approaching from the front entrance and came in with a purposeful stride, a friendly smile on his face. But as soon as he entered, he noticed something unusual. There was a noticeable hush in the store, and his eyes quickly scanned the room to see what had caused it. That's when he spotted Evelyn, holding a sniper rifle confidently, surrounded by a few young employees who looked slightly tense and embarrassed. Mr. Collins immediately sensed that something was off. He approached slowly, observing the interactions, the subtle gestures, and the expressions on both Evelyn's face and the employees. He saw that she was calm, knowledgeable, and completely in command of the situation, while some of the employees seemed unsure how to respond. It was clear that she had been underestimated from the moment she walked in. He stepped closer and spoke in a firm but warm voice, addressing Evelyn directly. "Ma'am," he said, offering a polite nod. Evelyn looked up, surprised for a moment, then returned his smile. The single word carried respect and authority, immediately changing the dynamics of the room. The young employees, who had been quietly observing her, shifted uncomfortably, realizing that their behavior was about to be officially acknowledged. Mr. Collins then turned slightly to the staff and asked, "Could someone explain what's happening here?" One of the employees stammered, unsure how to respond. They hadn't expected the CEO to walk in, and now they were forced to confront the situation honestly. Evelyn, still holding the rifle with practiced ease, explained briefly but clearly, describing her interest in firearms, her experience with different models, and the purpose of her visit. She spoke with calm authority, without defensiveness or arrogance. The CEO listened carefully, nodding along. His expression shifted from curiosity to admiration. He looked at Evelyn and said, "It's clear you know your rifles well. You handle them with knowledge and confidence. I respect that." The words hung in the air, carrying more weight than any reprimand or praise from a regular employee could. The young staff exchanged glances, suddenly aware of the contrast between their earlier behavior and the CEO's reaction. They felt a mix of embarrassment and awe as the CEO subtly reinforced the lesson Evelyn had already been demonstrating. Age and appearance do not determine skill or passion. Mr. Collins then approached Evelyn more closely, observing her handling of the rifle. "You have excellent technique," he remarked. "Your understanding of the mechanics, balance, and accuracy is impressive. Very few customers can demonstrate this level of knowledge, and even fewer of our staff can match it." Evelyn nodded politely, appreciating the acknowledgement but remaining humble. She didn't boast. She simply continued handling the rifle carefully, demonstrating her expertise without drawing unnecessary attention to herself. The employees who had mocked her earlier were now completely silent. They realized the CEO's attention had validated everything Evelyn had been quietly showing them. Her skill, patience, and composure were no longer just impressive, they were formally recognized and respected. One of the employees, shifting uncomfortably, muttered an apology under his breath, acknowledging that he had underestimated her. Evelyn responded with a gentle nod, showing she accepted it graciously but also reinforcing the idea that respect should have been given from the start. Mr. Collins turned back to the employees and spoke directly to them, his tone firm but calm. "This is how knowledge and passion speak for themselves," he said. "Judging someone by age, appearance, or assumptions is never acceptable. Treat every customer with respect, and recognize that expertise can come in any form." The young staff absorbed his words, their faces showing a mixture of embarrassment and understanding. Evelyn's quiet authority had already made them rethink their assumptions, but now the CEO had made it official, ensuring the lesson would not be forgotten. The customers in the store also noticed the interaction. Some whispered to each other, impressed by how gracefully Evelyn had handled the situation and how effectively the CEO had reinforced the message of respect. Evelyn, however, remained focused on the rifles, calm and composed, as if the attention around her was secondary to her love of the craft. Her quiet confidence had drawn admiration not only from the staff but now from the leadership of the store as well. With the CEO's arrival, the dynamic in the store had completely changed. The employees who had laughed earlier were no longer smirking. They were attentive, cautious, and eager to learn. They approached Evelyn politely, asking questions about her experience and seeking guidance on handling rifles more effectively. She responded patiently, continuing to teach in her gentle, knowledgeable way. The transformation was remarkable. A room that had started with mockery and subtle disrespect was now filled with quiet respect and admiration for her expertise. By the time Evelyn finished examining the rifles and interacting with the staff under the CEO's watchful eye, the lesson was clear. She had proven that knowledge, passion, and composure command respect, regardless of age. The CEO, having witnessed it firsthand, had reinforced that respect publicly, ensuring that every employee in the store remembered the encounter and understood the importance of treating every customer with dignity. Evelyn stood quietly, holding the sniper rifle with careful precision, as the CEO, Mr. Collins, looked on with admiration. The energy in the store had changed completely. What had started as subtle whispers and mocking smirks was now replaced by a tense silence and a newfound respect. The employees who had laughed earlier were no longer joking or whispering. They were watching her closely, realizing that they had underestimated someone simply because of her age. Mr. Collins stepped closer to Evelyn and spoke with a calm, authoritative tone. It's rare to see someone handle a rifle with such knowledge and confidence. You have an impressive understanding of these weapons, and you've demonstrated it perfectly. Evelyn gave a small, polite smile, acknowledging his words without arrogance. She had never sought praise. Her passion for firearms and her own personal expertise had been enough. But hearing it from the CEO made a subtle difference. It confirmed what she already knew about her skills and gave her a quiet sense of validation. The young employees shifted nervously, exchanging uneasy glances. They were fully aware that their behavior earlier in the day had been inappropriate. Mocking someone for their age, assuming they couldn't know anything about modern firearms, now felt both foolish and embarrassing. One of the employees, clearing his throat, finally spoke. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for my behavior earlier. I didn't realize." His words trailed off, hesitant and awkward, as he looked down, ashamed. Evelyn turned to him gently and nodded, her voice calm but firm. "Thank you. I appreciate your apology. We all learn as we go. The important thing is to treat everyone with respect, no matter their age or appearance." Her response was simple, but it carried a quiet power. It wasn't a scolding, but it was a clear lesson. Respect is earned not through looks or assumptions, but through recognition of skill and passion. Another employee, who had been quieter during the entire interaction, stepped forward, curiosity and humility in his eyes. "Ma'am," he said softly, "could you show us more about handling the rifle? We want to learn from someone who clearly knows what they're doing." Evelyn smiled warmly. She appreciated the sincerity in his request. Without hesitation, she began to demonstrate proper handling techniques once again. She explained how to hold the rifle to maintain balance, how to adjust the stock for better aim, and the importance of steady breathing while lining up a shot. Her instructions were clear and simple, yet they revealed a depth of understanding that was hard to ignore. She moved slowly and deliberately, showing each step with patience. She even allowed the employees to try small adjustments under her guidance, correcting their stances and grips with gentle suggestions. Each correction was paired with a brief explanation, turning what had been a tense, awkward moment into a learning experience. The employees followed her guidance carefully, visibly impressed with her knowledge and skill. Mr. Collins watched the interaction closely, nodding in approval. He could see that Evelyn had not only handled the rifle expertly but had also transformed the staff's attitude through her calm confidence and patience. It was rare to see someone command respect without raising their voice, without demanding recognition. Evelyn had done it effortlessly, simply by demonstrating her passion, skill, and composure. A few customers, who had been quietly observing from a distance, began to take notice. Some whispered among themselves about how remarkable it was to see someone so knowledgeable and poised. Evelyn, however, remained focused on teaching and demonstrating. Her calm, patient demeanor created an atmosphere that encouraged learning, rather than competition or judgment. It was clear that she had turned the tables completely. The students had become the teachers, and the mockery that had greeted her at the door was now gone. As the demonstration continued, the employees began asking more detailed questions about rifles, scopes, and maintenance. Evelyn answered each one with patience, never showing irritation or superiority. She explained how small adjustments could make a significant difference in accuracy, how regular cleaning maintained performance, and why understanding the mechanics of a weapon was as important as handling it safely. Her explanations were simple enough for anyone to understand, yet detailed enough to reveal her deep expertise. By the time she finished, the staff were no longer hesitant or embarrassed. They were genuinely engaged and respectful. They had witnessed firsthand the knowledge, skill, and passion that Evelyn brought into the store. Her calm authority had turned a moment that began with mockery into a lesson in humility, respect, and recognition of true expertise. Even the employees who had been the most dismissive had begun to understand that age and appearance are never reliable indicators of skill. Mr. Collins finally addressed the room. "Let this be a reminder," he said, his tone firm but encouraging. "That respect should be given freely, but expertise should always be recognized. What we witness today is a perfect example of how knowledge and passion speak louder than assumptions." The employees nodded silently, absorbing his words. Evelyn's presence had not only demonstrated her own abilities, but had also left a lasting impression on everyone in the store. As Evelyn carefully returned the rifle to its display, she felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. She hadn't come to prove anyone wrong or to seek praise. She had come simply to explore her passion. Yet, in the process, she had taught an important lesson. That respect is earned through skill, knowledge, and composure, and that assumptions based on age or appearance can be completely misleading. The employees now approached her with polite curiosity, asking questions and seeking advice. Evelyn answered graciously, enjoying the opportunity to share her passion. She left the store not only with the rifle she had hoped to see, but also with the satisfaction of knowing that she had changed the way people viewed her, and perhaps how they would view others in the future. After Evelyn finished demonstrating the rifles and answering questions, the atmosphere in the store had completely transformed. What had started as a tense and awkward situation was now filled with quiet admiration. The employees who had mocked her earlier were no longer laughing or whispering. Instead, they watched her closely, taking in every word and movement, recognizing that they had been wrong to judge her based on her age. One of the younger employees, the same one who had sarcastically asked if she needed a magnifying glass earlier, approached her cautiously. His face was a mix of embarrassment and respect. "Ma'am," he said softly, I want to apologize for my behavior earlier. I shouldn't have laughed or assumed you didn't know what you were talking about. I realize now that I was completely wrong." Evelyn looked at him with a calm, gentle smile. She didn't scold him, but her eyes conveyed understanding. "Thank you for saying that," she replied. "It takes courage to admit when we're wrong. What matters is that we learn from it and do better in the future." Another employee, who had been quieter during the entire interaction, stepped forward. He had been one of the staff members whispering to his colleagues about her age and capabilities. "Ma'am, I was also wrong," he said, looking down shyly. "I didn't mean to disrespect you, but I guess I assumed too much. Can you teach me how to handle these rifles properly?" Evelyn's smile widened slightly. She appreciated their sincerity. "Of course," she said warmly. "The important thing is to approach firearms with respect, patience, and focus. Skill comes from practice and understanding, not assumptions. Evelyn then spent the next several minutes guiding the employees through proper handling techniques. She corrected their grips, explained how to balance the rifle, and showed how to align the sights for better accuracy. Every correction came with a short explanation, simple enough for them to understand but detailed enough to show her deep knowledge. The employees listened carefully, nodding with each instruction, their earlier arrogance replaced by humility and curiosity. The CEO, Mr. Collins, watched this part of the interaction closely. He could see that Evelyn had not only corrected their behavior, but had also inspired a genuine desire to learn. He noticed the change in their demeanor. Their shoulders were less rigid, their expressions more open, and their tone more respectful. The CEO knew that this moment would stay with them, shaping how they treated customers in the future. Evelyn's presence had done more than teach them about rifles. It had taught them about respect, humility, and the importance of recognizing skill wherever it comes from. Evelyn continued patiently, walking around the store and answering each employee's questions in turn. She explained how different rifles behaved in different conditions, the importance of maintaining proper stance, and how to adjust the scope and stock for maximum accuracy. Her explanations were clear, calm, and practical. She emphasized that safety and respect were just as important as technical skill. Every point she made reinforced her message. Experience and knowledge are far more valuable than assumptions based on appearances. Some of the employees even began to ask more advanced questions, showing that they were genuinely interested in learning. Evelyn welcomed these questions, providing detailed answers and demonstrating techniques whenever possible. She encouraged them to handle the rifles carefully, to observe how subtle adjustments affected performance, and to always remain patient and attentive. The energy in the store had shifted from embarrassment to genuine engagement, with the staff actively seeking guidance from someone they had once dismissed. Customers who had been quietly watching the interaction began to murmur among themselves. They were impressed not only by Evelyn's skill, but also by the way she handled the situation with patience and grace. Some even approached her, quietly asking a few questions about rifles, scopes, and handling techniques. Evelyn answered each one kindly, never rushing, never showing irritation. Her calm authority and expertise had turned the store into a place of learning and respect, rather than judgment and ridicule. By the time she had finished working with the employees, they had completely changed. The ones who had mocked her earlier now spoke with respect, asking questions and showing curiosity. Their earlier laughter was replaced by attentive focus, their assumptions replaced by genuine admiration. They realized that Evelyn's knowledge and skill were not just impressive. They were a reminder of how easily people can misjudge others based on age or appearance. Evelyn looked around at the staff, satisfied with the transformation. She had not come to prove anyone wrong or to humiliate anyone. She had simply shared her knowledge and passion, demonstrating quietly but powerfully that respect and expertise are earned through skill, patience, and composure. The employees now understood that their behavior had been inappropriate, and they had learned a valuable lesson in humility and professionalism. Finally, as she prepared to leave, the CEO approached her once more. "Ma'am," he said, smiling warmly, "you've done more than just show us your knowledge. You've taught everyone here a lesson they'll never forget." "Thank you." Evelyn nodded politely, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had come for the rifles, for the joy of exploring her passion, but she had left a lasting impact on the people around her. A reminder that skill and respect go hand in hand, and that assumptions based on age can be completely misleading. As Evelyn walked toward the door, the employees called out polite goodbyes, their voices sincere and filled with respect. She smiled, acknowledging each one, knowing that the lesson they had learned today would stay with them for a long time. Her quiet patience, knowledge, and composure had turned what could have been a moment of humiliation into one of lasting respect and admiration, leaving everyone in the store with a story they would remember for years. By the time Evelyn was ready to leave the store, the atmosphere had completely transformed. The tension and awkwardness that had greeted her when she first walked through the door were long gone. In their place was a quiet respect, a sense of admiration from both staff and customers who had witnessed the entire encounter. What had started as a simple visit to browse rifles had turned into something much more significant. A lesson in humility, patience, and respect. Evelyn took one last look around the store, her eyes lingering on the polished rifles and neatly arranged displays. Each one had its own story, its own unique design, and its own purpose. She had spent hours exploring, examining, and handling them, but more importantly, she had seen the subtle change in the people around her. The employees who had laughed at her age, assuming she knew nothing, were now standing tall, attentive, and eager to learn. The shift in their attitude was almost tangible, and Evelyn couldn't help but feel a quiet satisfaction at the difference she had made. She picked up the sniper rifle she had been most interested in, holding it carefully in her hands. She appreciated its craftsmanship, its balance, and the way it felt in her grip. This was not just a tool, it was a piece of precision engineering, something she had long admired and studied. As she examined it one last time, the CEO, Mr. Collins, approached her. "Ma'am," he said with a respectful nod, "thank you again for sharing your expertise and your patience. You've left a lasting impression here today, not just on the staff but on everyone who witnessed your visit. What you've done goes beyond handling rifles. It's about respect, knowledge, and dignity." Evelyn smiled, appreciating the acknowledgement. She had not sought recognition or praise, but it was satisfying to know that her quiet demonstration of skill and composure had been understood and valued. The employees approached her one by one, each offering sincere words of gratitude. "Thank you, ma'am," said the employee who had mocked her earlier. "I was completely wrong to judge you, and I've learned a lot today." Evelyn nodded gently. "I'm glad. Remember, respect and knowledge go hand in hand. Always approach others with an open mind, and you'll be surprised at how much you can learn." Her words were simple, yet they carried weight, a reminder that the lesson went beyond rifles. It was about life, attitude, and humility. Even the other customers who had been quietly observing now approached her, asking questions about rifles, scopes, and techniques. Evelyn answered each one patiently, her calm demeanor making it easy for them to listen and absorb her advice. She had become more than a visitor. She had become a teacher, a mentor, and a reminder of the value of experience. The energy in the store had shifted completely, from skepticism and mockery to learning, respect, and admiration. As she walked toward the checkout counter to finalize her purchase, Evelyn noticed the staff moving with a new sense of purpose. They were no longer hurried, careless, or judgmental. Instead, they approached each customer with patience and attention, clearly influenced by the example she had set. The CEO watched with a satisfied smile, knowing that today's events would leave a lasting impression on his team. Evelyn had not only purchased a rifle, she had left a legacy of respect and humility that would continue long after she had gone. Evelyn completed her purchase and carefully packed her rifle. She handled the process with the same calm confidence she had shown throughout her visit, ensuring everything was in perfect order. As she walked toward the exit, the employees lined up politely to see her off. Their expressions were sincere, their voices filled with respect as they thanked her once more. "Have a great day, ma'am," one said. "And thank you for teaching us so much." Evelyn smiled warmly, nodding to each of them. "Thank you for listening and learning. That's the most important thing." As she stepped outside into the sunlight, Evelyn felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. This visit had been about more than rifles. It had been about proving, silently and gracefully, that knowledge, skill, and composure cannot be measured by age. The respect she had earned was not demanded. It was given naturally, through her patience, expertise, and quiet confidence. She had turned an uncomfortable situation into a moment of learning and growth for everyone around her. Driving away from the store, Evelyn reflected on the experience. She realized that her passion for firearms had opened a door, not just to a new rifle, but to an opportunity to teach respect and humility. She had reminded people that appearances can be misleading, that assumptions are often wrong, and that experience and skill deserve recognition. Even the youngest employees had learned a valuable lesson. Age does not define capability, and respect must always be earned through understanding, patience, and action. The story of Evelyn's visit would remain in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. Employees would share the experience with their colleagues. Customers would recount the day they saw a woman teach humility to an entire staff. And the CEO would ensure that the lesson remained a cornerstone of the store's culture. Evelyn had not sought fame or attention. She had simply acted with knowledge, patience, and dignity. And in doing so, she had left a mark that would endure far longer than any rifle she could ever purchase. By the time Evelyn reached her home, she felt a quiet satisfaction. She had come for a rifle, but she left with something much greater. The understanding that true respect is mutual, that patience and skill are always noticed, and that quiet confidence can transform even the most skeptical minds. She had faced mockery, turned it into admiration, and left behind a lasting impression of grace, knowledge, and dignity. A lesson that everyone in that store would remember for years to come.